3, 2, 1. Crazy thing that we saw in the NBA for some people. I know my man Jamal Murphy is still reeling. He cannot believe what he saw last night as the Clippers blew a 3-1 lead, losing to the Denver Nuggets in Game 7 of their second round matchup, 104-89. Stunning for a lot of people. But before we get into this discussion with Jarod, Hector, and Bryan Fonseca as well, I want to note that Jarod said something to me last night. I tweeted this out, and he said, maybe we shouldn't be as surprised about all this because a lot of people on this Clippers roster don't have that much experience outside of Kawhi. Looks like it kind of proved to be true. When I say experience, I mean late playoff experience. And there's a lot of things we could go into here. Scoreless fourth quarters for Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, playoff P, which playoff P, I don't even think you can use that anymore.
Nah, you got to get rid of that.
Yeah, he ain't.
Could you ever?
Yeah, I'm not sure you could ever use it. He did not. Those guys did not show up. So, first thing we're going to go into is, I think we could go into the shock factor. Jamal, we're going to start with you because I know you were shocked. And there's some people who were trying to come for you because you picked the Clippers. They're trying to come for you, man. I'm not. We're not here for that. But how
you? I'm not worried about all that.
I know you're not worried about it.
All that. But
how shocked were you, bro?
I was very shocked, and I'm like beyond shocked. I'm like shook. I'm like, whoa, like it calls into question like everything, I thought I knew, like how did this happen? And it's not just that they lost. I get, if you look at it, you go back and really look at it. Should we be shocked that Denver, who's been a good team all year for a couple of years now, beat the Clippers, who are a new team? No. But the Clippers were up 3-1. Okay, yeah. You had Kawhi, who always came up big in big moments, and the fact that Kawhi, Paul George is, I could have predicted that Paul George would be a no-show in Game 7 easily. I think I threw it out there like, oh, what if this happens? But for Kawhi to be a no-show, complete no-show in the second half, that was shocking to me. For Doc Rivers to get totally out-coached like that was a little surprising to me. Just the total collapse. It was like, I tweeted at the time, I was like, if there's such a thing as choking, the Clippers are doing it. Okay? Because, people say there's no such thing or whatever as choking. Well, if there is, the Clippers did it. Because, you got Paul George hitting the side of the backboard on threes and not even deep in the corner. Like, it was a weird angle to hit the side of a backboard.
Right.
And then next to the air ball. Like,
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't know what to think of anything anymore. I don't know what to say. I got nothing else.
It's so interesting because I'm not as dumbfounded as Murph, but in many ways I am. I watched all of Kawhi's possessions again this morning, individually on offense, and the stat sheet's going to say he played bad. Those are shots that he normally gets and will make more often than not. He missed a lot of good looks last night. Sometimes that happens in basketball. You miss shots. I would say defensively a lot in the second half. He gambled quite a bit and to try to make a play, and that didn't work, and it caused them even more problems and getting blown out the way they did. But there's something so interesting, Murph, that you just touched on. On paper, nobody would ever say Denver has more talent than the Clippers, right? Nobody would say that. But talent aside, Denver as a unit just has more cohesiveness, connectivity, continuity, and they know what each other is going to do. Nikola Jokic was the best player in that series. And he's a guy who can't jump out of a paper bag, right? Got no athletic ability, whatever. I mean, not no, but you know what I mean. He's not like a high-level athlete. But, every time that two-man game or double team come, listen, Harris, Murray, Millsap, they knew where to go because they knew, oh, don't worry, Jokic's going to hit us right in the shooting pocket. Bam, we're going to hit them shots. And the Clippers, for whatever reason, couldn't figure out how do we stop this, all right? They kept doing the same thing over and over. And Jokic was like, look, if you're going to keep giving me this steady diet of double teams and I know where it's coming from, I'm going to kill you. And that's exactly what he did, right? With his 13, 14 assists or whatever he had last night. But I said that before we started the show, Murray, Jokic, Harris, Barton, even though Barton's out and not playing, those four guys have been teammates since 16, 17. That matters. And then Millsap came the year after. They've built up that camaraderie, trust, and connectivity with one another. They've been through battles and not being good, and then being the 9th seed 2 years in a row, just missing the playoffs, then getting to a 2 seed, getting beaten 7 games, and the next year going 1 game away from the conference finals. Like, so they've built that up, right? So they know how to. All right, we've had some battle scars together, and we heal from that scar tissue. Clips ain't got no collective scar tissue. What is it? Now, this collapse could be their first. This wound and heal if they stay together. This could be something for them to build on, a la when the Spurs lost to Miami in the finals that year and then came back on a mission. Now, that was also Spurs continuity and a million years of togetherness and all that. But if you don't have that connectivity as a team and that culture, and the Clips don't have that, and I have to blame some of that on Doc because this team acted like going to the finals is a guarantee all year. And it's like, yo, man, like, this ain't the year 3 of a three-peat for you. This is the first time, all of you. Yeah, Kawhi is trying to repeat. Y'all ain't trying to do shit. So it's like, let's figure this out. And I just don't think that they ever got that piece of it together. And when you don't practice because of the new NBA rules and Kawhi's on load management and all that, and you have 4 months off because of COVID, that's all time that all these other teams who have been together, they got that to lean back on. You guys don't. And remember early in the season, Lou Will and Montrez and Pat Bev were like, oh, that's how it goes here? Kawhi and Paul George don't got to play? There was already that shit happening early in the season. So they didn't have time to work through all that. Yeah, it was getting better, and they were actually on a roll right before the season stopped. But, season stopped, and now they are what they are.
Bryan?
I mean, look, you touched on consistency, right? And I think that we just don't inherently reward consistency enough as it comes to just society in general. So new things come along, new people come along, launch something new on Twitter all the time, and they get like all these things because they just do something for the first time. And then maybe you don't hear from them for a while after they're not as successful, whatever the case may be, right? I think everyone just got very excited because of the names on the Clippers team. My concern with them was their consistency all season long because they haven't really played together, and that team chemistry matters. As you mentioned, Jamal Murray and Will Barton and Nikola Jokic and guys on the core of that Nuggets team basically played together for 4 seasons already. And the Clippers just got together. It's the same thing we see it in March Madness all the time. The number 1 seed who gets, 4 5-star recruits and starts all these freshmen, and they get together and they're supposed to go out and win, and then they lose to like a seed of white boys who have just been together for 4 seasons who don't shoot the ball very well. Like, we see it all the time, and it happens in like the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 every year. It's the same thing. It happened with Duke, with Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett, and that team. They were supposed to win against, I forgot who beat them because I don't know if it matters. Michigan State, and Michigan State have been together for a while. This is just something that happens all the time, and we just don't reward consistency enough. A lot of people get bored by consistency. They get bored by people killing it on their social media feeds by posting work every single day, going at whatever it is, and they like the shiny new thing that just comes along and posts whenever they fucking feel like it every once in a while. You know what I mean? Like, this is what it is. Like, there are just some things that people like. There are just some things. There are just some things that people like. And there are just some things that people just don't care as much of because the consistency kind of bores them. And Denver, I guess, was boring to some people, even though they have Nikola Jokic, who is probably right now, I guess, a top, 7, 6, 5, 8 player in the league.
He's all NBA. I mean,
what is it?
How many big men you taking over Jokic right now?
0. Yeah, except for maybe Anthony Davis.
Maybe Anthony Davis. If he counts, yeah.
If he counts, he plays right? Right.
That's it. And that includes for me, Bam. So for now.
Yeah, we know you're on that train. Yeah.
But are we making excuses for the Clippers a little bit because out of not being able to play together? Because look at the Lakers haven't played together. I mean, that's a brand new team.
Well, LeBron has been there. This ain't LeBron's first year with them. This is year 2.
Yeah, and while Kawhi has, and you know what though, like what really like messes with my head is just Paul George in general, because he's had playoff success in Indiana. Yeah, like he's somebody who, carried being a loose term because there was a great defense and all that stuff, but he was the best player on a good Indiana team.
He would check LeBron on D. Like, I'm not saying he would shut him down, but like he would hold his own.
Yeah.
They beat a very good Knicks team early in his career in the playoffs. The Knicks team that was the 2nd seed and had a good series with Miami after that. They had multiple battles with Miami. Roy Hibbert, who was who was ahead of his time and then he was behind his time. Like,
It's
you know
a
what I
matter
mean?
of like a day, like
It's
in a day.
very quickly.
Real quick.
It disappointed me because I'm a Roy Hibbert guy. But, like, Paul George has had playoff moments and playoff success in the Eastern Conference, and then, like, it's like that didn't carry over. It's like he got left over there in the East. He came out here in the Western Conference. Last year, we forget because it feels like so long ago, he was, to me, the MVP of the season by the All-Star break. And then he, the shoulders and stuff. But he still finished, I think, third in MVP voting.
Third, yeah.
They got rocked in the first round. And now here, he just didn't show up at all. So this is really...
Not only did he get rocked in the first round, on the game-winning play, he didn't even pick up Dame, being like, nah, that's a bad shot. Nah, homie, no, Dame pulls up from there, and you know that. Scouting report tells you that. You were like, whatever. Defense is Paul George's thing.
Right.
And Dame hit a 40-footer right in his eye.
But you know what? This is why Damian Lillard also gets to laugh now, because again, they're a team, Portland, that of their top 15 guys that had minutes last year, they only returned 2 of them. Nurkic came back later on, and then they signed Carmelo Anthony, and they still got as far as they've gotten. And then Dame got hurt at the end. But you turn around, and the Clippers had all these expectations, and they didn't even get past Denver, a team that a lot of people probably should have taken more seriously, but didn't. But again, the Clippers are just a more talented team, and they gave that away after having a 3-1 lead. So what do you do?
Well, to Murph's point, about letting the Clippers off the hook, and we talked about consistency. Well, one of the consistent things with the Clippers, and the Clippers in their franchise history haven't had a lot of consistency. They've been consistently losing. That's been true. But the person who's been consistently there has been Doc Rivers. And Murph, I believe it was you that used the word out-coached here. How much do we put this on Doc Rivers, right? Because I think to some level there's got to be some accountability. You blew 2 16-point leads. And the thing that I think you're talking about, Murph, where you're saying that you couldn't believe your eyes and what you saw, they looked lifeless in the second half. There was no energy. They could not figure out these pick and rolls from Denver. They made no adjustments. At least it looked like the players didn't. I got to think some of that falls on Doc. Does anybody think Doc is gone here? Because I think he might be.
I think he'll survive. But, I mean, there's no question. He has to take a lot of the responsibility. That's your job as a coach, to have the team ready, to make adjustments, to not telegraph where your double teams are coming from, to one of the best passers in the league. And they, Luka Doncic killed him like that also. So Doc has to go back to the drawing board and get better, just like the players do. But I think he'll survive. I don't think he'll get fired.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something I thought about last night too. And this is obviously going to be a hypothetical forever, but what happens if Kristaps Porzingis doesn't get hurt and doesn't get ejected in that first game of when Dallas was winning and we thought that they were going to win game 1 and then they ended up winning after that? And I really think, like, now you have a case, and we're never going to know this for sure, but you at least have a strong case that Dallas, Dexter's team, probably beats the Clippers in that first series, or at least pushes it to 7. And then we're looking at this even more, even differently than we are now, in a way that hurts the Clippers more, and just the perception and everything that goes into that.
I mean, you guys both touched on something interesting. They took the Clippers to 6 games without Kristaps, right? And that was Luka and all his amazingness. Look, I said it. Doc, I'm not gonna say he got out coached. It wasn't like Malone was running some crazy fancy schemes. But Doc just got too complacent with his lineups and were like, all right, I'm just going to ride with my guys. Again, Doc came into it once he got Paul and Kawhi thinking like, all right, I got the dudes, like, we're just going to win. And that emanated from him out to the guys. Yo, Kawhi could probably handle that because he knows what he's got to do. The rest of them dudes don't have the experience to – they can't. You can't just be like, nah, guys, we'll be all good. They have nothing to lean and tap into. And Murph, you said it about defense, right? Because that's the thing about Dallas and Denver both. They crushed the Clippers' defense. And defense was supposed to be this team's hallmark, right? Mm-hmm. I said it. There was a level this team could get to defensively that nobody else could get to. Talent-wise, I still believe that. But you know what defensive connectivity needs? Continuity and cohesiveness. When you are not cohesive and connected as a team, your defense is the first thing to go away. Because no one trusts anybody. You don't know where you're supposed to be. And they got shredded all series long. And I'm sitting here going, hey, what are you guys doing? Like, this is like, I mean, a rudimentary pick and roll. Like, how do you not know assignments on pick and roll? That's like basketball 101. And these guys just like, I don't know.
There were times that Kawhi Leonard looked lost, which
Yeah.
shocked me because
Like, I don't know.
What about Kawhi? So, how does this affect him, his legacy, and not even legacy, just the way people think about him now? Because remember, and I was one of the people saying, in the playoffs, give me Kawhi over everybody. I said that. Now, that's one of the things I was shocked about. He was a no-show, completely.
No doubt.
Well,
I'm gonna, not as an excuse, but I think his injury situation is real. Like I was watching him first half. He's tiptoeing around, like he's not, and it's not an excuse because he won it doing the same thing last year. So I'm not trying to use it as an excuse. But this guy, he has like a chronic issue in injuries, and they've played all these games back to back to back. It was the same thing last year. He was fine up until the Eastern Conference Finals, and all of a sudden he started getting worse and worse. Is he ever going? This is something that's going to be with him from here on out. He's not even 30.
Almost 30. It's almost 30.
The Clippers will not admit to this for obvious reasons, but yes, it is it's a known thing. It's a chronic issue. He cannot play a full 82-game season. Cannot play back-to-backs. That's just fact.
And does that hurt you when it comes playoff time? Can you ever have true chemistry if your best player is taking pretty much almost every other game off?
That's a fair question.
I think it's a fair question.
Yeah, go ahead, Dexter.
No, I think
it depends organizationally.
I think it is a fair question. I think the other thing about Kawhi, not in terms of legacy, I think one of the things about his game that becomes highlighted in this series is that he's very limited in his ability to create for others. And that makes me look at the Clippers and say, do they need to go out and get a point guard who can come in here and create a little bit for others? Because that's
who might help?
Derrick Rose?
I was gonna say Chris Paul, but they already had him.
Oh, Chris Paul. Yeah. I mean,
that was the Clippers' weakest position, point guard.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, by far. And then
Patrick Beverly, he's not a point guard. Like,
he's not.
He's a guard,
but he's
like,
not.
He's an irritant.
You would rather him be 6'4" so you could play him at the 2 more consistently. You know what I mean? Like he's not really somebody who he can run your offense, no doubt, but like to Dexter, your point, like he's not somebody who's gonna do what Chris Paul does in terms of working in the mid-range area, setting up other guys and things like that.
But they don't even have a guy you could trust that could take the ball. Like Kawhi can't even do what LeBron can do. As much as I love Kawhi, he's just not that kind of facilitator. That is a whole.
He's gotten better. He has gotten better.
He's gotten better at it.
Right.
But I still think they need.
But LeBron's a different level.
Right, and he's not the guy you want. If you look at the game last night, especially in the second half, he's the guy holding the ball a lot. He's kind of running for things to happen, and people weren't cutting and moving in the right way. That's a whole nother thing. And I agree with Jarod in looking at the game again. Look, he had a lot of shots that he just missed that he normally hits, and that happens sometimes in basketball. Now, Paul George, he was missing stuff and throwing up UFOs and all this other kind of stuff that is just absolutely ridiculous. Would look like he didn't even want to be there. I'm not criticizing or questioning Kawhi's heart or ability to play in the big game. I think he's proven that enough for us already. But I do think that some of the load in terms of him and ball handling needs to be taken off. And if I'm the Clippers and you're going to run it back with this team, which is the next point I want to get into with you guys.
Yeah.
You kind of have to run it back with this team because this is the win-now team. You're on a short window. Paul George and Kawhi basically on one-year deals at this point. You've got to run it back with this team. I was talking to somebody who was telling me, maybe you got to look at trading Paul George. I'm like, that's not going to happen. You've got to run it back with this team and see what you got, but you got to make some tweaks. Are you going to bring Montrez back? Are you going to re-sign Marcus Morris? Are you going to be able to upgrade at the point guard position? Those are all questions I think the Clippers have. And maybe next year going in, is all the pressure on the Clippers, and should we expect them to win, or do we look at them kind of like, maybe they're not as good as we thought they were?
You definitely have to run it back. I think you have to, because if I'm the Clippers, right, if I'm just looking at it from their perspective, we could blame this on the pandemic. You can blame this on a number of different factors. They shouldn't, because I think that this championship, if anything, is the most real one out of all of them, because there's no home court advantage. Guys are locked in a bubble. Like, now we're going to see who really is the best team.
Plus the pandemic will still be here next year. Okay.
Right.
So it's still gonna be another weird year.
You might be in another bubble for all we know. I mean,
Word.
Pray for November. But what's so, and even then, like, still. But the Clippers, I think you have to run it back with that team to all those points. They have guys on one-year deals and things of that nature. theoretically, the Western Conference, I mean, how much is it going to change really? Like, even before the pandemic, we didn't expect free agency to really, shift that much of the balance of power in this league for this year. That's really going to be next year when those guys are free agents. But for this year, I think most of the teams that we're seeing right now can, should, and probably will run it back. But, I mean, I don't know if we're going to get to this at some point. We do have to remember that they are on one-year deals. And I don't know about you, but I've already thought about what it would look like if Kawhi Leonard went to another team. And you know which team I'm thinking about?
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Because he did contact that person before Paul George.
Well, I was just going to say something about that, Brian. Let us not forget, Paul George was Kawhi's third phone call. Third. Call Kevin Durant first, then Jimmy, then Paul George.
Do you think now he's thinking about it being like, I wish it was my fifth phone call after you saw them shots hit the side of the backboard?
I mean,
I'll tell you what though, listen. I don't know who it's gonna be because they already did it last year. Pat Riley's getting somebody. He's like 75 or whatever it is, and they've already done this, and they still might win the championship. Right. Like they're getting somebody.
Yeah, 100%. Especially getting to where they've gotten now. That's just gonna attract players to come there. They know they can. They're already there without you. If they can get another star.
And to me, Kawhi's a better fit and on that team than Giannis is. I think Giannis would be a better fit in like Golden State or something.
The other thing too is Kawhi said in his post game last night, basketball IQ. He ain't got to worry about that on Miami, right? His teammates got that. He ain't got to worry about Jimmy and he right. He'll trust
Jimmy
them.
Don't care.
Paul
People
George.
don't talk about this either. And people don't talk about this either. Jimmy Butler doesn't care about scoring. He really doesn't. I noticed this when he was in Philly. I noticed this when he was even with the Bulls because remember he was on some pretty good Bulls teams at one point of his career. Yeah,
very whatever I gotta do.
He's the same player he was at Marquette. Like the kid, he's like the exact same. And I never thought he would be that player in the pros, but he actually became that same dominant player. Doing like workman-like dominant player that he was in college, which is shocking. But let me ask you this about Kawhi before we get off Kawhi. Is like what kind of leader is Kawhi? Like is Kawhi a great leader? I just had a conversation with a friend of mine who's been dissing Kawhi all year, telling me he's getting too much pub, and of course he feels great now. Talk about it. But is Kawhi a true leader? Does he make players on his team better?
I do think Kawhi is a good leader, but Kawhi is not a LeBron James type leader, right? And I think everybody needs leadership comes in different forms. And by the way, for as good as LeBron James is, he's not a perfect leader, quite flawed with all his passive aggressive bullshit and stuff that he does. Okay, like there's different ways to lead teams that work and that happen. Kawhi is a lead by example kind of guy, right? Like he's not gonna be rah in the locker. He don't do that. Kawhi shows you by the work he puts in. That's it. Like he's like if you want to roll with me, you gotta work. Jimmy's a confrontational, get in your face, gonna mother F you, all that. Okay, cool. That works for some people. Like, there's different types of leadership. But I think Kawhi, Brian would love working with Jimmy.
Would he? Oh.
I think it's about system and situation, though, right? Doc is a fine coach for Kawhi because Kawhi knows what he's got to do. Kawhi, Paul George, and the rest of them with Kawhi, I don't know. It's about, again, fit. It's all about fit, right? LeBron's so great, we know he'll fit anywhere. But even that, right? He had some friction with Spoelstra. We talked about that. He didn't want David Blatt, whatever. It's so much of it is about how everyone connects and jives together. I do think Kawhi is an excellent leader. I don't think we need to be like, jumping off the bandwagon or whatever wagon now. Look, no one is flawless in the playoffs. Go through all your favorite playoff moments. They got stinkers and bad games.
This one was bad. This one was really bad.
But again, if you watch it again, and luckily I got to see all the possessions on Synergy. The shots that he normally makes just weren't going in. Like I was like, oh well, you picked a bad night to miss shots, bro. Like,
do you think that? And Dexter, I'm gonna ask you this because we actually joked about this on a podcast episode that we had with Ben Couch a while back. But do you think leading by example was kind of a cop out also? Because like people say because sometimes not for Kawhi because Kawhi is Kawhi. But sometimes when I hear people leading by example, I'm just like, what the fuck does that mean?
I mean,
like, if Kyrie led by example, I'd be like, hell no.
That's right. You know what I mean?
Well, okay. Well, I'll say this, right? Like the point.
And you know what? But what bugs me out is when players say it. like, oh, I'm not like really that vocal. I just kind of lead by example. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I just want to show. And every time when I hear a player say that, that's probably how I should have framed it from the front end. When I hear a player say that, I'm like, yo, come on, man. That's just a cop out because you don't want to talk to dudes. You know what I mean?
I've heard players, people talked about leading by example, and I am 100% confident they were not leading by example. Like, I know they weren't leading by example.
What example?
And you're right. And so, no, Murph, that's the point, right? What is the example that they're leading by? I think it's important to look at that more than anything else, right? Because I agree with Jarod's point. Everybody can lead differently, and it all depends on fit, situation, circumstance as to how that leadership will work. I mean, what is your example? If your example is kind of showing up to practice when you want to, I mean, you could be leading by example, but that might not be the example that people should want to follow, right? And I agree, but you know what that goes on to, Brian? I think you bring up a great question. When players say this stuff, it is on us in the media to ask them, well, what is that example? But nobody ever asked that. Everybody's just like, oh, yeah, he led by example. Oh, we're good with that. Are we good with that? We don't even know what the example is.
Well,
Go ahead, Jamal.
Kawhi is funny because it's like, let's be honest, like Kawhi is kind of a dick, right? Does he even talk to his teammates? Period. You know, and then remember that funny.
Kyle Lowry says he's funny.
Remember the clip when he passed the ball to Reggie Jackson, and he's saying, I ain't passed for that bullshit. So
that was hilarious.
Is that his leadership right there? Is that how he leads?
I was dying. I was dying when I said that. Look, I mean, yeah, Kawhi definitely has those moments where he'll be like, yo, man, what's that bullshit you doing, right? Like, because again, it's his mindset and how he operates. Like,
is it moments or is he like that all the time?
And Kyle will tell you. Kyle says he's a funny dude, right? Like, remember the one last year on the Raptors when Norm, what's his name? Norm Powell wanted to dap him up. He's like, nah, walk, go to the back. Like, that's Kawhi, right? Like, I will say this. I think a great example of leadership is Jimmy Butler. In Minnesota, was anybody calling him a leader? No media people call him a leader. They're like, oh, Jimmy's a cancer. He goes to teams and wrecks locker rooms, whatever. He gets to Philly. What's the situation? Oh, he's too abrasive, right? All of a sudden, Miami now Jimmy's a leader. Jimmy has not changed. He's been the same dude from jump, but it works in Miami and didn't work anywhere else. Why? Because that culture fosters that kind of leadership, right? Eric Spoelstra said it. I love when Jimmy stops practice and starts cussing people out. Like, most coaches ain't down with that. But Spoelstra's like, Jimmy, do your thing, baby. And guess what? The other guys are like, yeah, Jimmy should have cursed me out because I was bullshitting. Yo, that...
But he was a leader in those other places. He would... In Minnesota, I know, the media may not have covered it, but he was a leader in Minnesota.
I agree.
We all knew that he was correct what he was saying.
I'm not saying he wasn't. I'm saying the general perception by a lot of media people. I agree he was. I agree.
Well, to push on that point, right? Maybe the problem is really with the media. To what you both said, I'm with Murph in that. And I'm with Murph in that he was a leader in those places before. It's the young dudes who didn't get criticized enough in those places for not listening to a dude who had accomplished more than them. You know what I do? I listen to the people who might have done a little bit more than me in something, and I might actually say, hey, I'm going to shut up on this one.
Well, here's the thing. You also just flatly have mostly white dudes covering a quote-unquote angry black guy, right? So that narrative is also going to play out a little bit differently because if Jimmy Butler is like, Dante DiVincenzo, if Dante DiVincenzo ever pans out to be anything close to that, which is not going to happen probably, but
not.
If that were to happen, the narrative would just be different. He's fiery.
If he was Luka Doncic.
If he was Luka.
If he was Luka Doncic, yeah, but I don't know because Luka Doncic is like he's Puerto Rican according to me and Rob Lopez. You know what I mean? We're owning him. You know what I'm saying? So like JJ Barea's already.
Yeah, see, I'm intrigued to see at what point do we start talking about Luka? If Luka, and I love Luka, who has some player feels. At what point are we questioning his leadership and if he leads by example? Next year?
People want to rush to it. People want to rush to it. Like, quit. Because now everybody wants to be the first to say pretty much anything, period, because they know what it can do for them. Well, they think they know what that can do for them. Like, people are just going to put that onus on. Like, next year, you're going to start seeing Luka Doncic versus Giannis, who's gonna carry the mantle after LeBron wins his, whatever ring. He just let's say he wants.
I know who the NBA would like to be the leader of that.
Yeah, I'm sure they want that. Yeah.
Wait,
Well,
I have a question. I wanted to ask you guys a question on this topic because Chris Haynes wrote a new Yahoo story, and in that story there was a confrontation from, I believe it was Game 2 between Montrezl Harrell and Paul George. And Montrezl Harrell in that confrontation threw a pass, not a bad pass, but they had a miscommunication on a pass that went for a steal, went the other way. Going back into the huddle for a timeout, they were arguing at each other, cursing at each other. And Montrezl Harrell said at one point, I forgot nobody could tell you anything, right? Something along those lines. It was almost verbatim what he said. To me, right? You see everyone's eyes here, right? You got to look up this story. To me, that tells me a lot. Like that one sentence, right? Because when you say some shit like that to anybody, like I've never told Dexter that. You know what I mean? He's never told me that. If you say, like, when you have an argument with your girl or one of your close friends that they, like, when that comes out, that's been pent up for a long time.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
That quote tells me so much without saying that much at all.
Well, I'll tell you. Well, I'll respond to that by saying this. I'll tell you what Playoff Pete couldn't say anything after Game 7 because I would have been like, how many points you had in the fourth quarter? Yeah. Like, what you going to say? I'm like, you going to listen to me let you tell that? Montrezl Harrell led him in scoring, if I'm not mistaken, right? In that Game 7. So, Montrezl Harrell showed up to some degree. I mean, Playoff P did it. And if that is the MO from Montrezl Harrell on how Playoff P, and I'm saying this very sarcastically.
Tongue-in-cheek.
Tongue-in-cheek. If that is kind of how he views him or his interactions with him, that he can't tell him anything, then that's not a good place. And I would also expect, guys, shouldn't Paul George be showing some leadership? Because leading by example is not the fact that somebody can't tell you anything. If I can't come and talk to you as a teammate, family member, whatever it may be, and I feel that you have this kind of wall up, then that's going to cause problems. And then you're going to look at, I can never trust this person. So I'm just saying, maybe there's some trust issues. Right?
Yeah,
wait, say that again?
Paul George is his 10th season? Paul George is
10th season,
yeah.
right?
Like Paul George, he's been... Like watch how he's been acting. Like it's weird. Like even right after the game, he was so ready with his excuse. Like it was just rolled off the tip of his tongue. Oh well, it's our first year together. It takes time. Like it just seemed like he was so ready for that excuse. Like it came out so smoothly. And one thing I remembered, like I think it was after a playoff game. It was some game in the bubble. They asked him a question about Kawhi. And, Paul George is a so-called star, too. I've never seen anybody so deferential to another star on the team. Like, he basically said, Kawhi is our leader. He is the guy we follow. And it struck me coming from Paul George. Like, I'm like, damn, like, he's showing Kawhi, like, a lot of respect. And he's a star, too. So it just makes me think now, like, he really wasn't taking any kind of responsibility. He was so fast to check out, so easy to check out. Like, the whole team probably just looked at Kawhi. When they saw that Kawhi didn't have it in that third and fourth quarter, it's like the whole team just gave up.
Murph, you hit the nail on the head.
Real quick, Jarod, real quick. I just want to say, real quick, Kyrie and Paul George are my top 2 candidates to retire shockingly early before people expect. They're going to retire together and go to New Zealand in 2022. I'm telling you, it's going to happen.
Murph, you New Zealand, I love it. Brian, New Zealand's a place we should probably visit. I know some people down there. Anyway. Copenhagen.
I've heard Australia's good also.
It is, but again, I don't think you like the people that inhabit there, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway,
Brian doesn't like a lot of people, but okay.
Yo, don't make me sound like a racist. You know what I'm saying? Like now we're taking the jokes.
No, I just make you sound like a dick. That's all. That's all.
Murph, you hit the nail on the head with a word you just said. Accountability. There ain't none in the Clippers organization. Again, not to make this all about Heat culture and make Brian get happy over there, but you know what they got? Accountability in the Heat locker room. And here's something interesting about Paul George.
Celtics too, by the way. Like,
he gets props over. Paul gets treated, and the Celtics, yes, even though me and Brad, whatever. Paul George gets paid and treated, and Brian, you'll like this, like he's a 95 or better rated player in NBA 2K. Mm-hmm. In reality, he probably an 82 or an 83.
Damn, 82?
Right? Not that low, but I feel
listen, Listen.
To me, he's under a 90 for sure.
He's like an
He's under a
87.
90 right
When
now.
when the game matters, he's about a 79.
you see what I'm saying? Like,
I mean,
Yo, his clutch rating is kind of low.
but
Brian.
that's why it boggles my mind.
Brian, you brought this up in the chat.
Mm.
If Paul George, James Harden, right, and Jimmy Butler.
Paul George, James Harden, Jimmy Butler, and Kyrie Irving, who would you want to start your team with? Howard Bryant tweeted that out.
In an 82-game season, of course I'm taking Harden because he's shown me over 82 games. Jimmy is number one without question for 16 games, and it ain't even close. And you know how much I love Harden. I don't want nothing to do with Paul George, nothing to do with Kyrie, nothing to do with who else.
Unless LeBron is next to Kyrie.
Wait, what was the question? What were the players?
Who are the players? Which player would you rather start a franchise with right now? Basically, it's Jimmy Butler, Kyrie Irving, Paul George, James Harden.
I mean, I think I don't care. 82 games. Why would I take Harden and just let myself get gassed before
Right.
82 games?
That's the thing.
That's so hard. Like, I'm not gonna go with Jimmy Butler. And just keep
You
it
guys know me. I would have taken I love what this highlights, right? You know me. I would have taken Jimmy Butler before the season began. I would have probably taken Jimmy Butler when he was still with the Bulls, if I'm being totally honest.
Of course you would.
Because like James Harden was third overall pick. Kyrie Irving was the first overall pick. And who's the other guy? I forget. Paul George. He was 10th overall pick. Lottery pick, but also seen as wildly talented. Just people didn't know because he played at the WAC. You know what I mean? Like we don't really know what goes on in Fresno State. No disrespect to anyone who went to Fresno State. But like people just don't really watch Fresno State basketball like that. So it was whatever. And Jimmy Butler, 30th overall pick, JUCO, never played AAU, 2-star recruit. I didn't even know he had a star, to be honest with you. Didn't even play his first couple years in the league, then won Most Improved. None of those other guys had to win Most Improved because they came out the gate and they were stars, almost instantly, right? Paul George developed very quickly and things like that, but it just symbolizes what hard work can do. Not to turn this into a cheesy thing, but it also symbolizes what like Jimmy Butler is obviously, if you're just watching it, if I just drop aliens on the planet and I have all four of them play basketball against each other, they're going to be like, oh, he's not as talented as those other guys are. But he probably works harder than all three of them. And he is, out of all of them, the most well-rounded player in terms of the physical and the mental adding up. Because Paul George is the most talented two-way player on both ends of the floor, better shooter than Jimmy Butler. But again, it comes down to not analytics, but who would you rather have in a big game? And that's why I love when we see things like this because, again, it's to Jarod's point that he makes all the time. None of these things are black and white. There's a lot of gray in all of this. Like, we all use numbers to back up certain things and data or whatever. Some people use numbers to go as far as picking Terrence Davis to be the
I was waiting for that one to come out.
over R.J. Barrett and Matisse Thybulle and stupid. But basically, like, when you're watching games, because this is the most important thing, like basketball, to Jarod's point, this is a point you made earlier, basketball is not really about basketball most of the time. It's about what we're talking about today: chemistry, cohesiveness, your mentality. Are you strong up here? Are you well up here? Paul George has hinted at having some sort of, dealing with some stuff mentally. Maybe that's factored into all of this too.
Maybe.
No. But like, all of these things sort of matter more than just, oh, this person could show up here, break a bunch of ankles, and get 30, and like, what are you really?
And got SpongeBob shoes. I know that's where you were going next. And got SpongeBob.
Yeah, like got the SpongeBob sneakers.
You know what time it is?
Dope. Yeah, and people.
But you guys,
like,
you guys do see. I mean, I know you guys understand that, right? There are 82 game players, and there are 16 game players, and sometimes there are players who can do both, right? But clearly, Jimmy Butler is a 16 game guy. That is clear.
So no, Jarod, you're right about that. But to put a bow on this conversation, because we gotta get out of here. Where do the Clippers go from here? I guess not really where they go, but do you guys see them recovering from this into next year? I think there's a lot still we have left to see, but do we see the Clippers recovering and bouncing back from this Game 7 loss?
I do think they will. Look, here's the thing. To your point before about what they're going to do, they have to run it back because they have no draft capital. It gave it all to Oklahoma City to get Paul George.
And the Knicks for Marcus Morris.
Right. They don't have their own
the Knicks
pick.
actually winning on this. I like that.
They don't have their own pick for the next, I think it's 6 drafts. It's pick swap.
2027.
It's pick
It's
swap.
2027.
So basically, when the Clippers get bad, and they're going to be bad probably in 3 years, and Oklahoma City's going to be better, they're going to swap, which means Oklahoma City's going to get their good pick, and they're going to get the Oklahoma City Thunder's crappy pick. So listen, they have to run it back and win a title like yesterday. I mean, not yesterday because they're out now.
Well, clearly not yesterday. Yeah.
Right, but they got to, because you can't trade Paul George now. I mean, you could, but you're trading him when his stock value is the lowest. Who wants him now? After another dud in the playoffs, he's not very good.
Who's gonna ever want him?
And you won't get much back.
Damn, Murph.
I'm not sure he's going to. I'm not sure he comes back from this. I mean, this is his perform. I mean, we just talked about his mental state. We don't know what it is, but it's tough to come back mentally from something like this, where you perform so poorly, you let people down. You didn't take any accountability. We see that. He's not admitting that, but we see that you didn't take any accountability. Confidence is a fragile thing, especially in sports. Like, confidence in sports is like 99% of the deal.
Yeah.
And once you hit bottom, it's tough.
Do you think that affects it? Do you think that affects the team, Murph?
Yeah. So do they ever really make it to where they should? We've seen other teams who, it took them a year or so to get it together. The Heat, when they first got together, but they choked in the finals. Okay, this is the second round of the playoffs. You were supposed to be a finals caliber team. There is something seriously wrong with this team, and I think Paul George is one of the big things that's seriously wrong. I don't know if he comes back so easily.
Yeah, and that Heat team lost to a Dallas Mavericks team who had a lot of veterans, which has to be
played together.
in. Yeah, they had chemistry. They had all those things that we're talking about, basically. Like, we knew, all right, Dirk is our guy. Page is going to shoot here. You're going to do this. You're going to defend Sean Merritt. Like, they had all these moving parts. JJ Barea, you're just going to play out of your mind. Like, whatever. Like that. Yeah. Jason Kidd. Like, look at the leaders we're talking about that was on that team. Like that. If there was
leading by example, they were leading by example.
If there were ever a team that was going to be the super team, it would be a team that's built like that. I mean, Miami is kind of similar to that right now in some respects, right? I mean, it's not exactly the same, but they're kind of a similar breed. And what I'm thinking about with the Clippers is, so Montrezl Harrell, I believe, is still going to be a free agent, right?
Yes, he's the one. He's the one you can trade. He's the one you can trade.
Yeah, I think his contract is. I mean, you would have to do a sign and trade, I think, now, because it's going to be this year. And quite frankly, I mean, given the quote that Chris Haynes reported that I just told you guys about a little while ago, I'm not bringing him back to play with Paul George on the same team. Like, I'm not doing that. So we'll see. I think I need to see how this goes, because we could be having a totally different conversation if Denver ends up beating the Lakers in this next series in the Western Conference Finals within the next couple weeks or so.
The Clippers should pray for that.
Yeah. So, because then we're going to start talking about certain things a lot differently as it pertains to the future. But for now, I just think that, I want to see if the Lakers can get this done. And I think that'll determine a lot in terms of how the Clippers are going to move forward. But I think generally most teams are probably going to stay something close to where they are, just because of general uncertainty.
Not being where it is.
Yeah, all those factors.
The uncertainty, Hong Kong, vaccines, COVID, the election. People maybe roll their eyes at all that, but all that extra stuff matters into a little NBA season. So,
real quick before we go, guys, all NBA teams got announced. I'm going to run them down for you.
Okay.
All NBA first team: Giannis, LeBron, Harden, Anthony Davis, Luka Doncic.
Damn, no Paul George?
I think we nailed that first team, actually.
Second team: Kawhi, Jokic, Dame, Chris Paul, Pascal Siakam.
Whoa.
Third team: Tatum, Butler, Gobert, Simmons, Westbrook.
I don't know.
Oh,
wow. That third team, I am not loving.
Give me that third team again.
I would switch Butler and Siakam. I will put Butler second, Siakam.
Siakam was really good the first 30 games.
Siakam had a better regular season.
Siakam had a really good regular season.
Second half.
Third team: Tatum, Butler, Gobert, Simmons, Westbrook.
Tatum, Butler.
Yeah, I'm with you, Murph. Simmons and Westbrook. I don't know, man.
I might throw Donovan in there.
I might.
Damn, I think Mitchell probably did have a better season. Well, definitely had a better season than Westbrook.
Yeah.
Simmons, I don't have a huge problem with, but he missed a good amount of time, including even the bubble games. He only played in 2 of the bubble games, right? I know that doesn't count to it.
You hear a name I ain't mentioned? Joel Embiid, nowhere to be found on any All-NBA team.
That is interesting. Who's the center on the third team?
Third team.
Oh, Gobert.
Gobert, yep. And that's
the first team was who?
First team was Davis. They used Davis as center because
So LeBron and Davis both first team.
Yes. And Luka making his first All-NBA first team.
And Kawhi's second team. Because he
First
doesn't play.
He doesn't play enough games.
Right.
Again, Paul George, who people consider a star, missing off of all these teams, just like he was missing in Game 7.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So, I guess this is the last thing I'll say on that. Westbrook and Simmons doesn't sound right to me. I don't know who I'm like. Off the top of my head.
Reputation for Westbrook, and it's like, look, at this point, nah.
Come on, media guys with this reputation.
I'm out.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. No, for real. Like that's a real thing. And with Donovan Mitchell, I think he should have gotten it. You know what I mean? I think he should have gotten it. The other guard, I'm trying to think of who else, because Kemba was hurt and he didn't quite have like that kind of season, All NBA season. I feel like he was better than Ben Simmons for a good chunk of the year.
You know who you could argue for the other guard? You know who you could argue? I don't think it would have happened. Ja Morant.
Shit, you know what? I mean,
yeah.
Wow.
Like on there, but you know what? You could have. I will say this about Rudy being third team. Just think about this. How good was Rudy in that series against Jokic? I mean, they essentially played to a standstill. Like that's how good Rudy is.
Yeah.
He played him to a standstill. Because now look how good he was against the Clippers.
On the All NBA teams, did they go guard, forward, center still?
Yes.
And they count Davis as a center, which is kind of cheating because he didn't play center all year. But whatever.
I don't like that. Yeah, I don't like that.
And speaking of the job Gobert did on Jokic, that's one thing in the Lakers' favor. They also have someone they can put on
a lot
Jokic.
of size. Yep.
You know, I mean, Anthony Davis can if he wants to expend all that energy, he can really limit what Jokic does.
That's the thing. Because Davis
Clippers had nobody.
Face. Right. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, because they have Montrezl playing center, and he's 6'6".
Right. He's not that. All right. Good addition there at the end, Jarod, with the All NBA teams. That is very interesting. If anybody learns anything from this episode of Let's Discuss, is that don't disappear in a Game 7. Leading by example sometimes can be overrated, and sometimes some people disappear on All NBA teams as well too. So. That could be it.
And work hard and be consistent. Don't worry about all the other shit.
Yeah,
no doubt.
I agree with that. All right, good discussion, guys. We will see where the Clippers go from here. But shout out to the Denver Nuggets because they're doing their thing, and we'll see how that series goes as well. There'll be a lot more NBA discussion to come, I'm sure. Good job, guys.
I'm wondering if Bam